Keep politics out of gaming. Keep my gaming out of politics. Yada, yada, yada. One thing about politics is that even if you don't care about politics, politics is sure to care about you. Let's get into it. Folks, how you doing? How you feeling? I am True Fernie. Welcome to this very haphazardly put together video. I just wanted to get on here and really talk about the issue with the Nintendo Switch 2's pricing. They didn't say the price right off the bat of the Nintendo Switch console, the Nintendo Switch 2 console, and games. You had to really dig through Nintendo's website to find out, and we found out that the base Nintendo Switch 2 console was going to be $450, to a lot of people's surprise, and a bundle version with Mario Kart World for $500. Now, there was a lot of misinformation about how much a Nintendo Switch 2 game was going to cost. There were reports of people saying that all games were going to cost $80, with reports saying that physical versions were going to be up to $90. All misinformation. The Donkey Kong Bonanza is coming out to be $70, and a lot of the Nintendo Switch 2 edition games from previous, games, for example, Breath of the Wild and so on and so forth, will be $80. It's here. And it's a shame that a lot of people really thought and, really believe that politics, that they don't have to pay attention to politics and that these things do not affect you. But we've been seeing a trend in this across the board, not just gaming. The cost of groceries is going up. The cost of living is going up. The cost of vehicles is going up. Every single thing is going up, and wages have stayed stagnant. People have been sounding the alarms that there's going to be a housing crisis. People have been sounding the alarm about a recession, etc., etc., etc. But gamers did not care. Gamers did not think that their favorite hobby would be effective. And here we are with the first direct example of how politics and tariffs specifically affect American consumers directly. I don't know what sort of mental gymnastics y'all thought, these Trump tariffs were going to be, saying that these were going to help the American people. One thing companies are always going to do is they're going to try and get their money. All right. If they have to pay more to import materials, import products into the US, you best believe they're going to try and make that money back. They're not going to sell things at a cost or even at a loss, especially not Nintendo, the company most famously known for not discounting decades old games and software and hardware. We've been playing Mario Kart 8 Deluxe for over 10 years, and people are still paying $60 for it. Get real. But here, let's go a little bit more into what the issues surrounding the Nintendo Switch 2 have faced. Now, today, that is April 4th of 2025 at 7:56 p.m. Here, The Verge reports that Nintendo officially has delayed the Switch 2 pre-orders over tariff concerns. Nintendo says pre-orders will no longer start on April 9th, but the console's June 5th release is unchanged. Emma Roth here reports that Nintendo is pushing back pre-orders for the Switch 2 due to concerns about Donald Trump's newly announced tariffs, according to a statement sent to The Verge by Eddie Garcia on behalf of Nintendo. It says pre-orders will no longer begin on April 9th. Pre-orders for Nintendo Switch 2 in the US will not start April 9, 2025 in order to assess the potential impact of tariffs and evolving market conditions. Nintendo will update timing at a later date. The launch date of June 5th, 2025 is still unchanged. There's still no word on when pre-orders will begin, as Nintendo says it will update timing at a later date. Now, they were going to send out invitations if you are a Nintendo Switch Online subscriber and you've been a loyal Nintendo Switch fan and you have at least there were a bunch of requirements for you to basically sign up to get the invitation directly from Nintendo to pre-order a Nintendo Switch 2. There's no reports as to when that's going to change. I know that they wouldn't be sending out the actual invitations until May 8th, which still gives Nintendo enough time to really assess what's going to happen with the Nintendo Switch 2 pre-orders. Now, initially, when the $450 price tag was slapped on the Nintendo Switch 2 here in the US, I was a little bit taken aback. Why? Many reasons. First of all, it is pretty expensive. It is almost just as expensive, if not more, than the PlayStation 5. I actually forgot how much the PlayStation 5 was at release date. $500. The cost of a PS5 on release was $500. This is a extremely less powered system, but of course Nintendo's strength and value stands behind its IP, obviously. But still, $450 is a lot of money. However, money changes its value. A dollar doesn't buy you the same amount of things that it did 5 years ago. Definitely not 10 or 15 years ago. Even since the pandemic, we've been seeing inflation grow. We've been seeing the dollar value devalue itself, and so on and so forth. And now with these Trump tariffs, companies are starting to really feel the pain of having to raise their prices, trying to make up for costs of importing. Just the fact of importing finished products is gonna destroy a lot of companies. I've worked in customs and as customs brokerage. I understand how tariffs work. I literally had to classify products for clients to make sure that they were paying the correct tariffs, the correct taxes, and the correct fees to be able to import their product into the United States so they could sell it to the American consumer. Time and time again, people told the American public a tariff is not a tax on the company. It is a tax on the American consumer. Why? Because companies are here to make money. They're not here to sell their product at a cost. What's the point? That's capitalism, baby. This is what a lot of people love and laud the free market for. People come here to make money. They don't come here to lose money. Nintendo is not a charity. Nintendo is a multi-billion-dollar company, and you best believe they're going to try their best to try and recoup that money from the tariff charges. Now, specifically, how does this affect Nintendo? Nintendo doesn't make their consoles in the United States. If they did, they would probably still have to pay a tariff because we don't make the components, we don't make the chips, we don't make a lot of anything here in America. You still have to import those materials and manufacture the product here in the States. The counter argument of people saying that tariffs work in the long run because it forces companies to set up shop here in the States, that brings in jobs for the American worker and whatnot. We don't have the infrastructure, and we most definitely do not have the labor for it. The American worker, an hour of American working hands, labor, American labor, costs exponentially way more than the cost of labor in a place like Vietnam, where Nintendo manufactures the actual console. Even then, if Trump's plan of bringing companies here, as an example, we'll use Nintendo. If Nintendo magically can make factories, production lines, and just have everybody, the talent and the labor needed to make these consoles within the United States, that console will still be more than $450 just based on the tariffs that they got to pay, because none of those components are made here in the States. They still got to import them into the States and pay a tariff from Taiwan, from anywhere that NVIDIA is creating these chips. Number two, they got to pay for American workers, and that in itself is huge overhead, because even if you're paying them minimum wage, that's way more money an hour that a worker in Vietnam makes. And again, there's a whole ethical issue there. There's no ethical consumption under capitalism. We all know that. But consider that into the price of an US manufactured Switch. And then you got a whole myriad of stuff: taxes, payroll, health insurance. You got to pay workers' comp, etc., etc., etc. It's a pipe dream, these Trump tariffs. It's a trade war. And in a trade war, nobody wins. The only person that wins is the people that are already rich. These companies, they can charge more and place the blame on the government and place the cost on the American consumer. Now y'all see? Now y'all see why politics is important. Now y'all see why people can't stop talking about politics, because politics, you might not care about politics. Politics doesn't care that you don't care. They'll make sure that you care. Furthermore, how does this impact Nintendo specifically? Here, Vox does a great job at breaking down the reason why Nintendo had to cancel the pre orders. Initially, when I saw that $450 price tag, I thought those 50 extra dollars are definitely purposeful. They knew that these tariffs were going to be put in place. I mean, China has had tariffs placed on them from America for the longest time. Believe me, I know. Since the 2000s. This is a long trade war that we've been in. A lot of y'all don't know, but it's been going. I thought the Nintendo strategy of pricing the Nintendo Switch to $450 was sort of like future proofing themselves to make sure that they wouldn't lose money in the long run, because it's a very unstable economy at this point. We're being run by a grown ass child that changes his mind at every single step. So Nintendo pricing at $450 gave them that little leeway or that little bit of overhead of extra money to say like, hey, he might increase tariffs a little bit here and there, but at least we're charging $450. We're already planning ahead, because remember, these prices are not just for right now. A dollar does not buy you the same amount of things 5 years ago. 5 years ago was 2020. We were during this was COVID 5 years ago. If you were making $7.25 in 2020, you could buy a little bit more than you can do today. When a company like Nintendo prices a console, they basically lock themselves for that price for 8 years, for the whole of the life cycle of a console. They have to stick to their guns. That's why Nintendo priced it so highly. They're future-proofing themselves. They're making sure that they don't have to change the price, increase the price due to inflation, due to tariffs, due to uncertainty in the market, whatever. There's a reason why it was priced so highly. Now, Trompito el culito, all of a sudden, placed retaliatory tariffs on everyone except Mother Russia. I wonder why, right? I wonder why. Now, Nintendo rolling back, canceling pre-orders is a huge red flag. Those tariffs were imposed after the Nintendo Direct, and I'm sure that there was a reason why Nintendo didn't announce the pricing of the Nintendo Switch 2, because they were aware that this was a real possibility. Now, worst case scenario, Nintendo doesn't do pre-orders or waits at least till May to reinstate the pre-orders. But if push comes to shove, I think we're looking at a very, very expensive Nintendo Switch 2. And not just Nintendo Switch 2. Nintendo Switch 2 games as well, at least physical, because guess where they manufacture the actual cartridges? I can tell you right here, right now, it's not the US. The Vox here says why Nintendo might increase its prices. Nintendo took a preemptive steps to avoid tariffs during the first Trump administration. In 2019, it started moving some of its Switch production from China to Vietnam as the US imposed tariffs on Chinese imports. Again, this is Nintendo working and future-proofing the issues that they were expecting from this administration. Now, the US is effectively punishing companies like Nintendo that took Trump's incentives to leave China for friendlier partners like Vietnam, which is a large producer of consumer electronics, shoes, and clothes. Vietnam was hit right after the Nintendo Switch 2 Direct, by the way, with a 46% tariffs, one of the highest rates on the schedule that the White House unveiled on Wednesday. That's because Trump has sought to target Vietnam and other countries that have a high trade surplus with the US, believing that they're cheating America. If you know what a surplus is, it just basically means that America buys more from that country than they buy from us. It's logical. America doesn't produce anything. But Trumpies and everybody in that crazy, I hate to say it, but cult, think that they're taking advantage of us because of that. No. We're first and foremost a consumer country. People sell their stuff here. We don't manufacture anything, but we're still one of the richest countries in the world. There's no need for us to manufacture anything. That doesn't mean they're taking advantage of us. However, he ignores the reason why Vietnam has a trade surplus with the US. It is relatively poor and cannot afford to buy many American-made goods. Another reason why we have a surplus with Vietnam. Trade analysts have also argued that Vietnam's exports benefit both the country itself and its trading partners. At a lower cost, it has produced high demand goods that were traditionally made in China. One of the reasons why we can have fairly affordable shoes and textiles is because they are imported from places in South and Southeast Asia, Goto said. In slapping tariffs on goods from Vietnam and other manufacturing hubs, the cost of producing and exporting goods to the American market will go up. Companies like Nintendo are expected to pass that on to the consumer in the form of higher prices. As a result, consumers may ultimately decide they can no longer afford optional goods like the Switch 2. There's going to be a lot of belt tightening on optional consumer goods, especially on consumer electronics. Now, again, the strategy here is from this administration is to try and force these countries to A, buy more from us, buy American made products, which they can't because a lot of these countries are poor, or at least poorer than we are in the United States, or B, have them move all the manufacturing to the United States. That won't work. That won't bring prices down, first and foremost. The American labor is more expensive than Vietnamese labor, for example. You still, companies, if they were to bring their manufacturing processes and plants here to America, they still got to pay higher taxes. They still got to pay higher labor costs, higher overhead costs, medical insurance, etc., for those workers. They also have to import every single component because America does not make consumer electronic components, at least not to the, what Nintendo needs. This is all ass backwards, by the way. Gamers are finally seeing the consequences. I mean, me as a Mexican man, I've been seeing these damn consequences since 2016, okay? I understand what Trompito el Culito has meant for this country. But now that it's directly affecting people who say they don't care about politics, that it doesn't matter, politics don't affect, keep politics out of gaming, keep all this stuff. I don't care about politics. It only makes everything blah, blah, blah. It's a little bit bittersweet because I hate being the type of person who says, I told you so, but I told you so. Politics does not care who you are. Politics does not care whether you voted or not. It's still going to affect you regardless. And I hope we look inward as to the issues here. I understand that a lot of people are upset with Nintendo, and it's easy to place the blame on Nintendo because it is their product at the end of the day. They made these choices to build in Vietnam, to do all this sort of stuff. But that's what capitalism asks. That's what capitalism pushes for, to make the most profit with the less cost. We're focusing on the wrong target. The target here are the tariffs, this administration, and honestly, rich people, man. Like, I only see rich people really increasing their net worth, increasing the amount of wealth that they've accrued, and regular people like us can't afford groceries, can't afford housing, can't afford rent, and now we can't even afford entertainment. When is it going to stop? When is it going to stop? I know it sounds very melodramatic, but believe me, this is something I think about day in and day out because I've worked in this industry. I've worked in import and export. I understand these things. And seeing the amount of misinformation around tariffs and seeing the amount of just ignorance surrounding how these things work has been very enraging. So let's bring back politics into gaming. Let's be real. Let's be honest. And let's truly make a change. Because I'm tired of this. It's ridiculous. Every single day is an emergency. It's a constitutional emergency. And it's ridiculous that we've let identity politics really control the narrative around even things such as gaming. It's become ridiculous. Start using your brain a little bit more. Stop letting hate fill your worldview. Please stop it. Because now you don't have Switch 2. All because of the way that people have voted in this country. It's very real. And it's very much affecting everyone. Peace.